Spiritual awakening isn't light and bliss, it's a death. And most people aren't ready to die. We like to think of spiritual awakening as this beautiful moment where everything makes sense and peace floods our lives. But that's a fantasy. The truth? A real awakening shatters your identity. It rips apart your illusions, exposes your shadows, and burns every comfort you've built your life around. It's not the beginning of serenity, it's the end of who you thought you were. There are 10 main reasons that's why most people don't survive it. They retreat, they numb out, they run back to the lies, because waking up hurts more than sleeping ever did. But if you want truth over comfort, keep listening. Number 1. Your old identity must die. Your old identity must die completely, unapologetically, and without negotiation. Because you cannot carry the weight of who you used to be into the light of a new consciousness. The version of you that was shaped by survival, by trauma, by society conditioning, by fear, and by ego is not equipped to walk the path of spiritual truth. That identity was built to protect you, not to free you. It learned how to please others, how to perform, how to stay small, how to win approval, and how to hide your true essence behind roles and masks. But the soul cannot awaken while buried beneath those illusions. And so, awakening demands a death. Not a physical death, but something more terrifying. An egoic death. The mind resists, fights, clings, screams, and bargains, because it only knows how to exist as that persona. It will tell you that letting go means losing everything: status, relationships, identity, purpose. And it's right. You will lose everything that wasn't truly yours. But that's the point. You will feel like you are unraveling, like you are going insane, like you no longer know who you are or what this life even means. And that is the moment of true initiation. That is the funeral of your false self. And it must happen if you are to be reborn into what is real. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly by stretching its wings inside its old shell. It dissolves, it becomes unrecognizable. And so must you. There is no spiritual awakening without this destruction. If your journey has been comfortable, you haven't started yet. Awakening is brutal not because something is going wrong, but because something is finally going right. The soul is breaking through and the ego is terrified because its reign is ending. But if you dare to let the old self burn, to let the identity collapse without rescuing it, you will rise not as a version of your past, but as something unnameable, untouchable, and free. You don't find yourself by clinging to who you were. You find yourself by burying that version and listening to the silence that remains. That silence is where your true self has been waiting all along. Number 2, comfort becomes your enemy. Comfort is the silent killer of spiritual growth. The seductive lie that whispers, stay where it's safe. Stay where it's known. It lures you back into routines, relationships, and thought patterns that may no longer serve you simply because they're familiar. But comfort is not peace. It is stagnation dressed in soft clothing. The soul does not evolve in padded rooms or predictable circumstances. It awakens in the furnace of discomfort, where everything stable begins to tremble and everything familiar begins to fall apart. Most people return to comfort because the unknown feels like death, and in a way it is. The death of the identity they've clung to, the beliefs they've worshipped, and the emotional crutches they've depended on. But true transformation only happens in the wild terrain beyond comfort zones, in the chaos where certainty collapses and illusions get exposed. It's in the restless nights, the spiritual crises, the loneliness that echoes like a scream, and the raw confrontations with your own shadow that growth begins. Discomfort is not a punishment, it is a portal. It is the pressure that cracks open the hardened layers of the false self and forces you to surrender. And yet, when the pressure mounts, most retreat. They go back to the relationship they outgrew, the job that drains their soul, the belief systems that no longer resonate, because those things offer familiarity, even if they're toxic. But nothing alive stays the same, and your soul is no exception. Growth demands that you choose evolution over ease, purpose over pleasure, truth over tradition. It demands that you sit in uncertainty without reaching for distraction, that you walk through fear without needing guarantees, that you let go of what you thought you needed in order to discover what you actually are. Spiritual awakening begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I stay comfortable through this?" and start asking, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me?" Because every time you choose to remain in comfort over growth, you say no to your own becoming. But when you lean into the burn, when you stop treating pain as a mistake and start treating it as your teacher, you realize discomfort is not your enemy. It's the only thing that ever made you real. Comfort protects the ego. Discomfort frees the soul. Number 3, you lose people. And that's part of it. One of the most painful but necessary truths of spiritual awakening is that you will lose people. And it won't be because you've done anything wrong. It will be because you're no longer the version of yourself that fit into the spaces and dynamics you once called home. When you shift internally, when your awareness deepens, and your values begin to align with your soul rather than your conditioning, your external world cannot stay the same. Relationships built on your old identity start to crack. Not because you don't love those people, but because love built on illusions can't withstand truth. Friends you once laughed with may feel like strangers. Family members who once celebrated you may now look at you with confusion, judgment, or even rejection. They'll say you changed, and they're right. You're not the same. You're no longer willing to dim your light to be accepted, no longer able to lie to yourself just to keep the peace, no longer interested in playing roles that suffocate your spirit. And as painful as it is, this is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of authenticity. It's not that you're broken, it's that you're becoming real. And the more real you become, the more you'll feel the friction between your truth and the identities others want you to maintain. Some people were never in love with you, they were in love with your compliance, your agreeableness, your predictability. The moment you begin to walk your own path, you stop being convenient to those who preferred you, silent, small, or easy to manage. But this loss is sacred. It clears the space for soul-aligned connections, for relationships that honor your truth rather than suppress it. It teaches you how to stand alone, how to trust your own inner compass even when no one else sees what you see. And it reminds you that awakening is not about gathering approval, it's about shedding everything that isn't real, including relationships that cannot grow with you. You will mourn, you will question yourself. But in time you will see that losing people was not a tragedy, it was a clearing. You weren't abandoned, you were unhooked, you were redirected. The price of awakening is high, but the cost of staying asleep is your soul. Let them go. The real ones will find you in the light. Number 4, there is no map. One of the most disorienting truths about spiritual awakening is that there is no map, no step-by-step guide, no universal timeline, no guaranteed destination. And that reality terrifies the mind, which is addicted to control, predictability, and structure. The mind craves certainty. It wants a checklist, a roadmap, a teacher who can say, do this, and you'll arrive. But awakening doesn't work like that. It is not a neat journey. It is messy, non-linear, and deeply personal. What liberates one person may feel meaningless to another. What feels like progress one day may feel like regression the next. There are moments of clarity followed by complete confusion, joy followed by unbearable grief, stillness followed by inner storms, and all of it is part of the process. The mind wants to label these fluctuations as success or failure, forward or backward, but the soul knows better. The path is not a straight line, it's a spiral. and it often takes you deeper before it lifts you higher. You may revisit the same emotional wounds again and again, not because you're stuck, but because each time you're peeling back another layer, facing the pain with more presence, more awareness, more courage. And this lack of structure, this unfolding without instructions, breaks down the mental frameworks you've used to navigate life. It forces you to let go of the illusion that someone else has the answers, that there is a perfect formula, that you can master awakening like a school subject. You can't. This is not a destination you reach by effort alone. It's a surrender into what you already are, beneath the noise of conditioning. That's why the mind panics. It cannot control what is not linear. But that's also why the soul expands. Because freedom was never meant to be found inside the walls of predictability. The absence of a map isn't a flaw in the journey. It's the very thing that makes the journey sacred. It requires trust in the unknown, faith in the unfolding, and a willingness to walk blind while feeling everything fully. You are not here to follow someone else's path. You are here to walk your own, even if no one understands it, even if you don't understand it. Because awakening is not about reaching a fixed endpoint. It's about becoming radically honest, deeply present, and fully alive in a process that can't be controlled, only surrendered to. Number 5, your mind will turn against you. During a spiritual awakening, one of the most jarring and often terrifying experiences is realizing that your own mind, the very thing you've relied on to navigate life, can and will turn against you. As soon as you begin to peel back the layers of your conditioned self and step toward truth, the inner voices that once whispered beneath the surface rise up in full force. Doubt screams that you're delusional. Fear insists that you're unsafe without the structures you're shedding. Shame creeps in and tells you that you're not worthy of this transformation, that you're broken, that you'll be abandoned. These voices are not new. They've always been there, but awakening removes the distractions that kept them hidden. And that's what makes it feel unbearable. You're no longer numbing, avoiding, or unconsciously agreeing with them. Instead, you're sitting in raw, unfiltered silence where they echo the loudest. The mind, especially when faced with the collapse of its old identity, reacts like a cornered animal. It will do everything it can to maintain control. It will fabricate chaos, invent imaginary futures, drag up past traumas, and loop you in obsessive thought patterns just to pull you back into the comfort of unconsciousness. But here's the paradox: this chaos is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of progress. These voices are rising because you've disturbed them. They don't want to be seen, because to be seen is to be exposed, and to be exposed is to be transformed. Awakening brings light to the parts of yourself you've disowned: the inner critic, the wounded child, the anxious mind, the part of you that believes love must be earned through suffering. And when you bring awareness to these parts instead of running from them, you reclaim power over your own inner landscape. But make no mistake, this confrontation is brutal. It's not romantic or easy or linear. There will be nights where you question your sanity, where it feels like your mind is eating itself alive, and the temptation to shut it all down will be immense. But if you can sit in that fire, if you can listen without believing, observe without attaching, and feel without fleeing, then something miraculous happens. The mind begins to quiet, not because it has been conquered, but because it has been seen with compassion. And that's where the shift begins, not by silencing the mind, but by no longer being ruled by it. Number 6, solitude is a requirement, not a side effect. Solitude is not some unfortunate byproduct of spiritual awakening. It is the requirement, the crucible, the sacred space where the real work begins. You won't awaken in a crowd, because awakening demands a level of intimacy with yourself that cannot happen when you are surrounded by noise, distraction, or the expectations of others. In solitude, all the masks fall away. There is no one left to impress, no one to validate you, no one to rescue you from your own reflection. And while that level of stillness can feel unbearable at first, it is in those quiet, stripped down moments when no one is watching, when no one is affirming your worth, that you finally come face to face with the truth of who you are. Not who you pretended to be, not who the world told you to become, but the raw, unfiltered being underneath all the stories. And yes, it can be lonely, deeply, achingly lonely. Because when you start to detach from the external world, you realize just how much of your identity was built through relationships, roles, social feedback and noise. But in that void, something extraordinary happens. Your soul starts to speak. In the silence, you hear the subtle callings of your truth. The buried pain you've avoided, the longings you silenced to fit in. Solitude becomes a mirror that doesn't lie. It reflects your shadows and your light. It shows you where you're still performing and where you're finally beginning to live honestly. And that's where transformation happens. Not on a stage, not in group consensus, not in the echo chamber of opinions, but alone, in stillness, in the depth of your own presence. The reason most people fear solitude is because they've confused aloneness with abandonment. But the deeper you go, the more you realize that solitude isn't empty. It's full. Full of clarity, full of presence, full of wisdom. It strips away what's false so you can stand, perhaps for the first time, without leaning on the world to define you. You discover that your connection to yourself, to the divine, to the infinite, doesn't require an audience. It requires a willingness to be with what is. And in that sacred silence, where you are no longer performing, but simply being, awakening doesn't just begin, it becomes inevitable. Number 7, you must unlearn everything. Spiritual awakening is not an accumulation of knowledge. It's a dismantling, a shedding, a radical unlearning of everything you thought you knew. We've been conditioned to believe that the path to truth lies in adding more wisdom, more practices, more books, more spiritual jargon. But real awakening isn't about stacking truths on top of all lies. It's about stripping everything away until only what's real remains. It's about unlearning the beliefs you inherited from your parents, your culture, your religion, your trauma, the stories that told you who you were supposed to be, what life is supposed to look like, and what's worthy of love. Awakening demands that you question everything, even the things that once gave you comfort and identity. It asks you to let go of labels, doctrines, achievements, and social roles, not because they're inherently wrong, but because you've confused them with you. And so the process feels like destruction. It is the dismantling of the mental scaffolding you built your life upon. The ego will panic because it equates unlearning with loss. But what you're losing are illusions. You were not born broken or incomplete. You were born whole. But from the moment you entered the world, you were taught otherwise. Taught to seek approval, to fear failure, to chase happiness outside of yourself, to see separation where there is unity. Awakening is the slow, often painful peeling away of all those lies. It's realizing that many of your thoughts aren't even yours. They're echoes of systems, survival mechanisms, and outdated beliefs passed down like heirlooms. And this process is not glamorous. There's no applause, no external validation. Just a deep unraveling that often leaves you feeling like you know less now than you ever did before. But that emptiness, that not knowing, is the beginning of truth. Because when you let go of what you were taught to believe, you create space for what your soul has always known. You don't awaken by becoming more. You awaken by becoming less of who you were told to be and more of who you already are. The truth doesn't need to be learned, it needs to be revealed. And that revelation can only happen when you're brave enough to unlearn everything, stand in the nakedness of your being, and trust that what's left after the illusion dies is not a void, but freedom. Number 8. You'll crave numbing but need presence when the pain of spiritual awakening rises to the surface, and it will, often without warning. Your instinct will be to run. You'll crave distraction, comfort, anything to pull you away from the rawness. You'll reach for your old escapes, the scrolling, the food, the work, the alcohol, the busyness, the relationships that kept you from feeling too deeply, not because you're weak, but because numbing has been your survival mechanism for years, maybe your whole life. You were never taught how to sit with your pain, only how to manage it, mask it, intellectualize it, or suppress it. And so when grief, fear, shame, or anger come up in full force during awakening, the nervous system screams for relief and your mind races for an exit. But the truth, the uncomfortable, unyielding truth, is that presence is the only way through. Presence doesn't judge the pain or try to fix it. It simply allows it. It holds space for the messy, chaotic, uncomfortable parts of you that are surfacing, not to punish you, but to be integrated and finally set free. Numbing only delays the process, prolongs the suffering, keeps the wound buried and festering. But presence, the courageous act of staying with yourself in the discomfort, is the medicine and the mirror. It's the medicine because it allows healing to begin in the very place the pain was born, in your nervous system, in your subconscious, in your body. And it's the mirror because it reveals what the pain is trying to show you, where you've abandoned yourself, where you still carry stories of unworthiness, where your fear has been running the show. Most people never awaken fully because they refuse to feel. But awakening is not a concept to be understood. It's an experience to be lived through. And presence is the portal. It requires sitting in the fire without flinching, breathing through the ache without escaping, witnessing the storm without needing it to end on your timeline. And when you stay, when you truly stay, you realize the pain was never your enemy. It was your invitation. It came up not to destroy you, but to show you where your soul was still trapped in old stories. So when the craving to numb arises, pause, breathe, feel, and remember, the pain is not asking to be solved, it's asking to be seen. Number 9, you realize you were never in control. One of the most humbling and jarring revelations during a spiritual awakening is the realization that you were never truly in control. Not of your life, not of your circumstances, not even of your own path. For years, maybe decades, you lived under the illusion that if you just tried hard enough, planned well enough, controlled every detail and managed every outcome, you could build a predictable, safe and orderly life. But awakening shatters that illusion like glass, leaving you face to face with the vast, wild unknown and the terrifying beauty of surrender. Because surrender is not defeat, as the ego would have you believe. It is not weakness or giving up. It is the only doorway into real peace. When you awaken, you begin to see how much of your suffering came from your desperate attempts to control things that were never yours to command. How others see you, how relationships unfold, how the future plays out, how the universe delivers what you think you need. You see how control was a coping mechanism, born from fear, born from trauma, born from the belief that if you weren't steering the ship, everything would fall apart. But the deeper you go, the more you realize that life was never waiting for you to take control. It was waiting for you to let go, to loosen your grip on the narrative, the outcome, the identity you build around knowing what comes next. True surrender doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you stop forcing what doesn't flow. It means you trust the intelligence that's been guiding your life all along, even when you couldn't see it. It means you learn to ride the waves instead of trying to command the ocean. And yes, letting go of control is terrifying at first. It feels like death to the ego because in many ways it is. But on the other side of that surrender is freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't depend on perfect plans or external circumstances. The kind that lets you breathe deeper, live softer, and move with grace, even in the unknown. You were never driving, you were never meant to. And when you finally stop gripping the wheel and allow life to unfold through you, not because of you, you find what control could never offer: peace, alignment, and the quiet knowing that everything is happening exactly as it's meant to. Number 10. Most people stop at the pain. Most people, when faced with the pain of awakening, stop right there, at the threshold. They get a glimpse of the truth, a flicker of something deeper, something real, and then they retreat. Not because they don't want to awaken, but because they didn't expect the process to hurt that much. They thought awakening would feel like bliss, not like being ripped apart from the inside out. But the truth is, awakening is a death before it's a rebirth. It burns through everything false, the masks, the roles, the attachments, the identities you've clung to for survival. And that burning, emotional, psychological, even physical, feels like too much for most people. So they go back to the distraction, the comfort, the noise, the numbness, back to sleep. But those who are willing to keep walking, who don't run from the fire, but through it, discover something far greater than fleeting happiness. They discover liberation. Because on the other side of the pain is not a better version of your old life, it's the end of the illusion that you needed that life to be whole in the first place. Liberation is not about escaping suffering, it's about no longer being bound by it. It's the freedom that comes when you stop fighting reality, when you stop needing things to be different to feel at peace. But to get there, you must be willing to sit in the dark long enough for your eyes to adjust. You must face the grief, the shame, the fear, the disillusionment, not as enemies to be conquered, but as messengers guiding you back to truth. Pain is not the end of the road. It's the beginning of awakening. And if you trust it, if you surrender to it without flinching, it becomes your teacher, your purifier, your passage. Most people never reach this point because they believe pain means something is wrong. But in awakening, pain often means something is finally being seen. And to see clearly, to see without the distortions of ego and fear, is the most liberating experience a human being can have. So yes, the fire